Steel Curtain Network.
¡Por Jorgito! ¡Touchdown! Najee Harris! DJ Watt!
What is up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and welcome to the very first post-game show of the 2024 season. I know it's the preseason, but it's still a post-game show. I'm Jeff Hartman, joined by Dave Schofield. Brian Davis will eventually be with us on this show, but he's still on the West Coast, so we're recapping
not this show, not tonight, but
What?
on the post-game show.
Yes, he will eventually be joining us.
Yeah.
All right. The Texans win 20-12 at Acrisure Stadium in week 1 of preseason action. Dave, what's up? How's it going?
I just think back to a year ago how we felt during the preseason games, and we knew that it really wasn't. It didn't last. It really wasn't indicative of the regular season. But boy, it did feel pretty good at the time. Tonight, just kind of felt like, yeah, there was you could find some good things, but there was so many sloppy, not good things that really was the big difference as to why the Steelers only ended up with 12 points.
Well, I think that, if last season the coaching staff might have had trouble keeping the players focused because the preseason went so well and everything was clicking on all cylinders, they're not going to have that concern after this game. There is a lot of teach tape out there for them to diagnose, to dissect, and it was sloppy. It was the first game. Like, this is kind of what you expect. A lot of backups, a lot of missed tackles, penalties,
balls on the ground,
bad decision making, Quez Watkins. So nonetheless, it's a situation where there was a lot of that. And let's also remember, I'm not making excuses, but the fact that the Houston Texans have played a preseason game already.
Yeah.
So they do have a game under their belt. They had, it seemed like, gosh, how many quarterbacks did they have? They keep on rolling out these quarterbacks. Like, this is incredible. And they have so many quarterbacks. But nonetheless, Dave, what was your knee-jerk reaction to the game?
Yeah, knee-jerk reaction was that, when you talk about so many times over and over again that it's 4 or 5 plays that make the difference in a football game. I feel that the Steelers, especially in the first half, did better outside of those plays. They were doing better on a play-in, play-out basis. But then the plays that they didn't do well were really bad. They were doing fine on offense, but then you get the botched snaps. They're drive killers, or the sacks, things of that nature. So they're doing well. One play sets them back. Defense doing well. One play, boom, long touchdown.
Yeah.
So that they were so on the wrong end of those game-changing plays, where on the just regular 5 yards in a cloud of dust plays, they were coming out on the better end of those. But that just kind of goes to show that, how important it is to be focused and perform every single play, because you can go out there as a defense, and my goodness, we saw this in the second half. You can do great on first down. You can do great on second down. Throw them back, set them up third and long. But then you give up that third and long, none of that matters.
Yeah.
2 great plays, then backed up by a bad play, and it all goes downhill. So those are the kind of things to look at. It's not that you can't take anything good out of some of the stuff that happened, but there was definitely a lot that you can build on, more that you can build on than what you can take away. For
our own Corey Eckenroth, who was at the game in your seats, I believe. He said, I think he put it well. He said the Steelers struggled on money downs, the third downs, offense and defense. Like, that's where you make your money. That's what Mike Tomlin always says. And I agree with that. And I also want to say that I think it all depends on how we, as people with microphones in front of our faces, whether we're fans or not, how much do we really want to dissect this? Because there are people that were just fuming at the 2nd and 14 run. I think it was to Jaylen Warren. And this was after maybe the first botch snap. And like, here we go again, 2nd and long running play. And I'm like, okay, I understand that. And we lived through that for 2 years with Matt Canada. I understand people's frustration, but I'm also not about to get up in arms over a preseason play call. So it comes down to how bad
it was still in your scripted zone when you script your
yeah.
beginning plays. Yeah.
How bad do we want to break everything down and really look at this with a fine tooth comb? And how much do we say, that's the first preseason game, let's cut them some slack? Dave, how do you decipher those things?
It's really tough. And honestly, it's going to take a little bit more breakdown than just watching it live, because so much of me trying to follow every play was trying to figure out who was actually on the field for a lot of things. And then there's so much to take in when you haven't been watching football for months that I had to kind of remind myself what I needed to do to watch it as well. So now I'm trying to remember what your question was.
How do you decipher it's the first preseason game, and let's really dissect this with the fine tooth comb, which we do in the regular season because the games are counting, but in the preseason, it's different.
Well, you really do need to dissect it with a fine tooth comb. The Steelers do, because they need to find their weaknesses and get better at them. Individually and collectively. So that's something that you want to do. I would rather have something that you can work on. You've talked about this before, coaching. You almost kind of hope that you don't want to go out there and have, too perfect of a scrimmage or something like that then you kind of get a little bit overconfident and you don't really have stuff to work on. Trust me, the Steelers have a lot to work on.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to break this game down. We're going to look at some statistical performers that did well, players that might have done well, but their stats might not be indicative of that. And I do want to ask you, though, first, before we I want to get this out of the way right out of the bat. You talk about the Joe Gibbs quote of how the football game can be broken down into like 4 or 5 plays. I got to be honest. I felt like one of the turning points early in the game, if we're trying to look at this in halves, was how Mike Tomlin didn't challenge that Van Jefferson catch on the sideline.
Yeah.
I mean, it's preseason. I get it. And maybe he says in his postgame, well, I wanted them to have the challenge or something. But I don't know. Like that was a catch. It seemed like everything kind of turned after that. So.
Well, the one thing you couldn't see great on the replay was, did he have full possession at the moment he got his feet in? I'm still assuming that he did. I didn't see anything where he didn't. So if they would have really broken it down, I'm not saying it was a slam dunk, but at the same time, to me, that's a play that in the regular season, Mike Tomlin challenges. In the preseason, he's like, I want to see how these guys, bounce back from not getting that call, and now they've got third down.
Yeah,
maybe it's a teaching moment. I don't know.
That's a fair assessment. All right, let's start like we always do, looking at the numbers, looking at the stats, looking at the box score. And we're going to start with the quarterback position, and the Steelers' starting quarterback was Justin Fields. He played the few series that Mike Tomlin predicted he would. He finishes 5 of 6, 67 yards, 11.2 average, no touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked twice for 15 yards, 113.2 rating with 2 fumbles. That was a bad connection between Herbig and Fields. Who's to blame? I never saw a good enough replay to be able to say either way. But Dave, how do you assess Justin Fields in this game?
Well, it is difficult because of, he's blamed for both of those fumbles. I'm not sure they were on him. So I would like to get a little bit more feeling of, hey, who is that on? Because it goes on the quarterback no matter what. I remember last year, Mason Cole just giving absolute crap snaps. You know what I'm talking about. Those fumbles always got credited to the quarterback. So to me, I'm a little bit more would like to have a little bit of more of an understanding of what went wrong on those. He did give up some sacks, but I don't know that they were necessarily on them. It was, I think, especially the one I think of that was Troy Fautanu, where they're like, oh, there he is. Welcome to the NFL. He ran his guy around the arc beyond Fields to the opposite side of Fields, who then came back from the right side to then sack him. Like it wasn't even on the side of the line of scrimmage that he started on. He went around him, behind him, and then came back. So part of me is like, you would think that the tackle when he does that, but he didn't really slow him down much at all. That was the other problem. So I don't know if I could put that on Fields holding it too long versus how much time that he had. No one was open. So I'm not saying that he did poorly, and I'm not saying that he did great. I will tell you that I don't think he had a third down conversion. That's a key statistic of where things need to come in, even if it's just because you're checking it down on third down and you don't gain it, because he only had the one incompletion. So in all, I'm not, I hope we don't have to give him a grade. I'm not saying it was awful. I'm just saying there were some things there that I can see, like, okay, I see why people say there's some concerns over Justin Fields. And I could also see some nice throws of why people were like, yeah, Justin Fields has a lot of upside. It didn't really move the needle much for me after the game than where it was before the game.
And Chris Adamski of the Tribune Review, he's in the locker room and said that Nate Herbig took 100% blame for the 2 bad snaps with Justin Fields. Herbig's that type of guy. He's going to take the blame no matter what. But ultimately, that's just what they're saying right now. For me, Justin Fields' play was typical Justin Fields play in terms of it was a roller coaster. If he can, he just has to level things out a little bit. I think that's what we talked about, Dave, on Thursday. Yet last night, the preview, I said I wanted to see Fields be more on time. He made some good throws. He and Pickens continued their connection. George Pickens had 2 catches for, I think, 25 yards. They seem to have a good rapport with one another. Again, the Van Jefferson catch, which wasn't a catch, could have made him a perfect 6 for 6 if that's overturned, if that's challenged. So I thought Justin Fields, it was a good stepping stone. In no way, shape, or form am I saying this guy is the future, that this guy is the starter. And Mike Tomlin did say in his post-game press conference that he's expecting Russell Wilson to play in the next preseason game. So that'll be interesting to see how that takes place as well. All right, Dave, let's talk about your guys up front. Let's talk about the offensive line. We mentioned Nate Herbig. Injuries, let's get this out of the way since we're talking about the trenches. Keanu Benton left the game with an eye injury. He said, Mike Tomlin, that he's okay. Troy Fautanu had a brace on his leg, and he did not stay in the game very long. I noticed this because Broderick Jones was playing way longer than I thought he was going to on the right side when Dylan Cook was on the left. But what did you think of the offensive line in this game?
Well, it's interesting because sometimes you make statements about things or about players, and then you realize, you know what, maybe I'm taking some stuff for granted. Like I'm saying, Broderick Jones is good enough. He could play either side, just that they've got to figure out what they're doing otherwise and everything else. I don't think Broderick Jones early in this game was playing particularly well. Early on, he was quote unquote trying to chase down blockers after he had missed them. Mm-hmm. So Broderick Jones had a rough game, in my opinion. I thought the offensive line early on was struggling. Like the very first 2 plays were not good. They weren't. But then on third down, they formed a nice pocket and everything there. Or not third down, it was the third play. Sorry, it wasn't third down. And had a nice pocket for him. So to me, the offensive line really started kicking it in gear when it was Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick that came in. I noticed a difference there. They weren't getting surge in the run game, and they were kind of getting it handed to them a little bit. And until they made those substitutions.
Do you think that comes down to the pivot point in the center? Do you think center has that much to do with those interior runs? Because I agree with you. And Frazier and Fautanu and McCormick, when they all entered the game, it just felt different. And maybe it was because I had attention on those guys, and I'm thinking, okay, here we go. Like, let's keep an eye on these guys. What do you think it is attributed to the better push up front?
I don't know. Maybe just those guys being fired up and ready to go. I mean, I have to remember it wasn't Sam Mala that was out there, but Spencer Anderson didn't seem to be doing that bad.
Right.
When he was out there, and I didn't even notice Dan Moore because he wasn't. I mean, did he come back in after that first series? I don't know that he did. He played the first series.
I don't think so. The second series is when I saw on Twitter that here comes Broderick Jones at left tackle and Troy Fautanu on the right.
Yes, and I thought, well, maybe they'll come back the next one and have it be Moore and Fautanu. And then I didn't really get to notice that too much.
Right.
But especially that first series, I thought the offensive line was was not performing up to par, but they got much better as the night went on. And I don't know if if I'm ready to crown, it's Zach Frazier and McCormick and Falatano, those 3 draft picks, they're going to make all the difference in the world. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying for tonight, it just looked better when they got out there.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the offensive line, again, in pass pro early, I think they struggled at times. But like you said, the sack where Justin Fields just he was manipulating the pocket, and it just was that with Danielle Hunter, that wrong place, wrong time wasn't necessary. That Falatano got beat badly. They did start to get some push. The Steelers, from a running perspective, if you look at what did Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris do? Najee Harris, 3 carries, 9 yards, 3.0 average. Jaylen Warren, 3 carries, 11 yards, 3.7 average. So let's transition now to the running backs. Daijun Edwards. Well, what are you going to say?
No, well, this goes with the running back, so this is good.
Oh, okay. Daijun Edwards' career finishes the game high, 3 carries, 28 yards, 9.3 average, 1 touchdown. The Steelers rushed for 109 total yards, 25 carries, a 4.4 average, 1 touchdown, and a long of 24 yards. And that was Mr. Edwards before he cashed in and scored the touchdown. What did you think about the running backs?
Well, I was going to say, if you look at the first team guys, the better thing that I was looking at the first quarter stats where the Steelers, they had 22 rushing yards on 9 attempts, 2.44 yards per rush. But I'm pretty certain those botched snaps go down as running plays. That took it away. But at the same time, defensively, my goodness, they only gave up 4 rushing yards on 4 rushing attempts for 1 yard in the first quarter when you're talking about the ones-on-ones. So early on, it wasn't great because I like to focus on the ones-on-ones in the preseason, and it wasn't wonderful. But it did get better as the night went on, and even towards, the second quarter, I'm thinking was even better as well. If I look at those numbers, second quarter, they upped it to 35 yards on 8 rushing attempts, which was 4.38 rushing yards. So they were out rushing them in each quarter as you went along. So it was a bit of a slow start. It seemed you can't do that when it's your ones, when you're only playing a few series. But overall, when it came to the running, I thought Jonathan Ward looked like he was running hard out there. Edwards had ripped off that nice big run that you couldn't really see very well because they were talking to Joey Porter Jr.
Yep.
During the play. So they had a couple nice ones, but especially with the first group, there's lots of work to be done.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Kind of a hodgepodge, and it's a preseason week 1. That's what you typically get.
Yeah.
I do want to go into the pass catchers, and so let's talk about them for a little bit. Calvin Austin III leads with 2 catches for 49 yards, had a long of 25.
And he had one called back.
That's true.
On the hold. So
would have had a touchdown if Kyle Allen doesn't overthrow him. Yeah. He's wide open in the end zone. But Scotty Miller is 3 for 47. 38-yard long. Des Patrick, 1 for 34. Pickens, 2 for 25. Mentioned him, and a whole lot of others with 1 catch. But Dave, what did you think about the pass catchers?
Well, I liked what I saw out of Pickens and Jefferson when it was the first group out there. That was 12.5 yard average for Pickens. He was only 1 catch, but for 20 yards for Jefferson. And he had that other one that I think you could have challenged. How long was that one for? That would have been like more than 15 yards, I think.
I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah, so I liked seeing where they were attacking the field and that they were pulling them in with that. And I also thought that as they went on, I didn't seem like there were really any drops or anything. They had a really high completion percentage, if I think about it. They completed 76% of their passes. They only had 7 incompletions. So the wide receivers, I felt, were bringing the ball in and getting the job done.
Yeah, I do want to update this as Mike Tomlin was addressing the media. Troy Falatano has a knee injury, and that was per Mike Tomlin, and he needs to have that further evaluated. So that's not good. So we'll see. Maybe it's something minor. Maybe it's something a little bit more serious. We'll see. We'll keep you up to date at steelcurtainnetwork.com on all that news, all those news and notes. As for the pass catchers, Dave, the only thing I wanted to add was I wish I saw more tight ends on the list. I know that Connor Hayward did score a touchdown and he had 2 targets. And Pat Freiermuth
no targets to Washington.
Exactly. That's what I noticed. Pat Freiermuth had the 1 check down for 6 yards on a 3rd down, which resulted in a punt. I wanted to see that. I was expecting to see more tight end usage, but we just didn't see it. And I don't know, maybe that's something they're still working on. Maybe they're still implementing that. And I don't think 1 preseason game is enough to draw some drastic conclusions, but I was hoping to see a little bit more tight ends. Anything else on the offensive side of the ball, Dave, that you wanted to touch on?
No, because I didn't include the tight ends when it came to the pass catchers. I should have, because I wanted to mention that about Washington. But it's, you can just have those things that can kill a drive, whether it's a penalty or a ball on the ground. Any kind of negative play can just completely stall. And the Steelers that's the thing. They were moving the ball with their possessions early in the game. Then it just stalled out.
Yeah.
So there's stuff you can say that are positive, but you've got to clean it up. You can't let those stalls happen.
For sure. All right. What we're going to do is, for those that are listening on the audio side, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to touch on the defense. We'll go our final thoughts. We'll talk special teams as well. And then we'll call it a show. But if you're watching live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking around. We have a couple super chats to get to before we dive into the defense. Brandon Diaz, he gave us $1.99. Thank you very much, Brandon. He said, sloppy. Quez is gone. We have a punter. Go Steelers. We'll talk about Quez Watkins when we get to special teams for sure. Corey Eckenroth, the band that was there, said, gave us $1.99. Said Peyton Wilson is going to be that dude in a year. So I think let's start with Peyton Wilson. I was looking in the live chat early in the show, and some people were saying that they didn't think he looked very good. I thought that he popped on the screen, like you noticed him. And to me, that's
early.
Yes, early on. And did he make all the plays that presented themselves to him? No. He missed some plays. I'm sure he would admit that himself. But ultimately, I thought he played a decent game. He led the Steelers with tackles in this contest. 7 tackles, 5 solo, 1 for a loss. Dave, what was your assessment of the rookie linebacker? We'll start there.
I thought he came out and really established himself well early. And then I thought some things started to break down as it went on. I was looking for him early, and then I stopped looking for him. And then all of a sudden I hear rumblings of, Peyton Wilson didn't, and I just wasn't looking at him. So when I was paying attention to him, he was doing good. I shouldn't have stopped. That was my fault. But I mean, for a rookie playing in their first preseason game, at least he came out strong to start. You can see what he's capable of, but you could also see that there's things to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I thought it was a really good performance for a rookie who was probably being thrust into a lineup that he probably would not typically be in. Patrick Queen would be there alongside Landon Roberts. He would have a limited role. Not bad. Afton Forrad gave us $2. I'll put this on the screen here. Do you know the time of possession?
Yep.
I believe, well, the Steelers were winning that, but then the Texans had that really long time of that
it was
drive.
Like a 9.
Yeah.
See, and then that the problem is they have both of them in black here, but I'm fairly certain that this is, because the Steelers had 2 turnovers. I'm trying to break these down. They won the time of possession 31-32 to 28-28. So
yeah,
they're basically, 2 minutes difference.
Very good. Okay. Thank you for the tip, Afton. We appreciate it. So going at the box score, Dave, you look at some of the Texans statistics. You talk about rushing. They only rushed for 80 yards. 19 of those were on a singular run by Xavier Hutchinson. 27 carries, an average of 3.0. Not bad. But there were times where the Steelers' run defense looked a little soft. What were your thoughts on the run defense?
Well, they only gave up 24 yards in the first half, which was a 2.7 average. I thought they were doing a real nice job against the run early on. Now, what was the big run? Was that the end around?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, because that was, what was it? It was a 19-yard run. Yeah, by Xavier Hutchinson. Yeah, that was an end around. So I mean, you can't do that, but I mean, people don't like when you use the term jet sweep. You take that out of there, and it's even more impressive. But I mean, even with that thrown in there, holding them to 3 yards, I felt they were doing a nice job against the run throughout. With the biggest thing coming against them was that long drive.
Yeah, then was it 9 minutes? You said
it was something crazy like that. Here I can tell you here shortly. Yeah, it was. I was thinking it was something like, because was that the one they missed the field goal?
Yes.
Yeah, it was 8 minutes and 54 seconds. So yeah, basically 9 minutes.
Yeah. All right. Well, what about the pass defense? But let's start with the pass rush. The Steelers have 3 sacks, 2 on Davis Mills, 1 on Case Keenum for 23 yards. The players, they got the sacks. We had Montravius Adams had 1, DeMarvin Leal had 1, and Jeremiah Moon had the 3rd. So that was a sack party. And I think it's worth noting, in case people didn't know this, and James Grammer in the live chat asked this question, that news broke at 4:00 that Marcus Golden decided to retire. The guy they just signed a week ago decided to retire, and the Steelers put him on the reserve retired list. And so that, I'm sure, had an impact on how they handled this game and personnel and stuff like that. But Dave, what was your take on all that?
Yeah, the guy from Germany ended up starting the game. Opposite of Herbig. It wasn't even Moon or anything. So, because I think that did kind of mess up their rotation a little bit. But, okay, you said the pass rush, right? Just making sure.
Yep.
Sorry, I got new headphones. I'm trying to get used to them. I thought there were some people that I thought played decent games that might not show up as much on the stat sheet. I thought Montravius Adams really stood out well with what he was doing, getting his hands on the ball. I thought that there was one play I remember where the quarterback sat back there and had all day. That was really the only one I could recall. Other than that, it's not like they were dealing with comfort. I mean, my goodness, one of the bigger plays, it was that 3rd down play that got him down, that got Houston down close to score. He had to step up into the pocket and split everybody and throw the ball just before he crossed the line of scrimmage because the pocket was collapsing. There was, like I said, I can only remember one play where he sat back there and had a lot of time. So I felt like they were doing adequately. I don't know that I would say it was outstanding, but I thought it was good enough.
There's always moments where you just, I don't know, you just hope that certain things go well for certain players. And I was actually really happy that DeMarvin Leal got a sack. That guy just hasn't really found his niche. Montravius Adams has had a great camp, but so has DeMarvin Leal. And everyone said, is this going to translate into game action? Because he's flashed before in training camp, but never really gotten to that point in game action. Yes, it's a preseason, but he did that. And so good for DeMarvin Leal. Thought he had a good game. I thought Montravius Adams, agree 100%, had a great game. Jeremiah Moon in the second half, when he was getting more time, started to actually settle in. You saw him playing well. Go ahead. What you're saying.
Kyron Johnson there towards the end, he was making some plays. So
absolutely. So let's finish up the defense with the pass defense. There were some issues on 3rd down. We know this. Houston, from a receiving standpoint, they had 198 total yards receiving, 10.4 average, 19 receptions, along of 34, which was Tank Dell, and targets were they had 28 total targets. Gosh, they had a lot of people that were targeted. What was your thoughts on the pass defense? Because this was a tough one for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you look at the first quarter and Houston only has, 40 or 45 yards of offense, but 34 was on that long 3rd down, that it's really frustrating that they're giving a lot more liberty to allow quarterbacks to throw the ball away whenever they're going to get sacked, because Herbig completely blew that play up. Could have been a huge loss on that play, and then they come back in the very next play, give up the long pass, and don't tackle.
Yeah.
So, but that's how defense works. You can make 2 great plays and then give up a terrible one. I mean, they were making great plays. That was their first down of the game. Was that touchdown? The way that things were going for the defense. So it was streaky. That one was really bad. I don't know that there was anything else that was bad. Like there was that one that 4th down play they went for it. Darius Rush was right there on that guy, and they just, barely slipped the ball in to where he could pull it in for a catch and convert. Which all that really would have done was change time on the clock. So I noticed. I like to see Corey Trice come up and make that play. Was surprised him and Rush weren't out there more than I knew of. That one really surprised me that they didn't really seem to get out of the field until late. But
yeah, it was real late.
Yeah. So, but a lot of it, I don't really. I'm not concerned over it, but I'm not saying that it was outstanding.
Little things always stick out to me, like Joey Porter Jr. hitting that DPI. I'm like, come on, man. We can't maul the guy 10 yards down the field and expect to not have a flag. So hopefully he can clean that stuff up. And I'm sure that they're going to, hey, when you're missing TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, you're going to have Patrick Queen. Think about all the layers I just named of the defense.
Yeah.
But we saw some good things still. We saw some
that was what, five starters that were announced earlier in the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your tip? Any final thoughts on the defense before we go to special teams?
They just typical what you have to do on defense. It has to be every play. One bad play could be a huge gainer, a field flipping play, or even a score. So you've got to bring it every single play. And the Steelers, they brought it the majority of the time. There were just they just have to get that full consistency with it.
Yeah, and we'll see how they handle that in the defensive side. And if in week 2 of the preseason, we don't see some of these names that we just mentioned being in the lineup and how that might change the things. What do you want to say, Dave?
Well, because the other thing you got to think of is like, oh, well, look, the Texans already played a preseason game.
Yeah.
That's true, but you know what's more important than that you might not think about that I just remembered? Because they had that preseason game, they came back for training camp a week earlier.
Yeah.
So they have how many more practices under their belt too, not just let alone the game. So just getting out there and working through those things with practices, you could tell that one team was just a little bit more together than the other.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So let's go to the last part of the team building process. We want to call it that, the special teams. So we did not see Chris Boswell. Matthew Wright was kicking. Matthew Wright missed a point after. That was because of a high snap from Christian Kuntz. The punter, Cameron Johnston, had some, I think he had some good plays. It definitely some touch that we're not used to seeing from the punter in terms of the pooch punts. He wants to get down inside the 10. I don't know what to say about Quez Watkins. That probably just isn't just blatantly like, what are you doing? Trying to return the punt that goes over his head turns into a fumble. That was such a really bad play and a game-changing play. But I don't know, Dave, what do you think about special teams?
That is where I was really disappointed.
Yeah.
That was, to me, that was the most disappointing. 3 punt returns for 50 yards. 3 punt returns for 50 yards. The first 2 were for 40. One was for 22 and one was for 18. The third one, I guess, had to be 10. So that was too much. I mean, that's what set up their first touchdown. Where they were close enough was because of the big punt return. Now, I'm not putting that on the punter. I'm putting that on the whole unit. All of them included. So that to me was the bigger thing. Was the number of return yards was just not good.
It was sloppy. The whole game was sloppy. The special teams was the same. I do have to ask you, Dave, did you see Cameron Johnson? This was probably his second punt. I think it was Dell that was returning it. and Cameron Johnson made like a tackle on the sideline.
Yeah, they could have flagged that. They could.
This guy played for the Texans last year. Let's not forget
this.
Yes,
he did.
He was a teammate there, and he started jawing at him. And I'm like, what is going on?
Well, that was after he popped him out of bounds. But
I know. So he pops him out of bounds, and then he continues to jaw at them. I'm like, there must be a beef with these two guys from last year or something. Because I mean, typically a punter is not going to, unless you're Daniel Sepulveda, who is built like a linebacker, you're not going to. You might make the hit, but you're not going to follow the guy on the sideline and continue to talk trash afterwards. I don't know. So, yeah. Any other final thoughts on special teams, Dave?
Yeah, the new kickoff. I'll be honest with you. If it seems like they're going to get a return to about the 30 anyway, I think you're going to start seeing touchbacks again.
You think so?
I think if this is causing teams to get the ball, generally the ball was between but around the 25 or 30 yard line every time. And if it's going to be that close to the 30, if you're not going to really be able to pin them inside the 20, let alone the 25, you might as well not worry about it popping and just do the touchbacks. I would not be shocked based just on tonight. It could change there. Maybe that's not a huge sample size because I'm not watching across the rest of the NFL, but based on tonight where those possessions were starting, I mean, you're obviously not going to do it now because you need to work on it. But come the regular season, I wouldn't hold it against the team for that. Like here, kickoff. The Steelers on the kickoff, they began at the 23. Well, the one that began at the 14 because of the penalty, but they would have been there. The one was at the 40 because of the penalty that got them all the way out there. And then their other one that they received was at the 28.
Where does the touchback start you?
30. Oh. So Houston, their starting point on the three kickoffs they received was the 30, the 24, and the 31. To me, I mean, if you look at that, you're talking about on average that's starting at like the 28. That's almost not even worth seeing if they're going to bust it. I was just surprised that it was going to be close to where a touchback would be, that teams might just decide to just go ahead and kick in the end zone.
Well, this makes sense now because I didn't realize it was the 30.
It was supposed to be the 35. And when they changed the rule at the very end, they moved it to the 30.
I know it was Sean Payton in Denver who has actually openly said, I think it needs to be a 35. It needs to go to the 35.
Yeah.
Because if you only have it at the 30, they're going to do exactly what you said. If you have a dynamic return guy, just kick it in the end zone. We'll start at the 30-yard line. We'll be fine.
Don't kick it short. Don't give it to them at the 40 like the Steelers got it.
Yeah, exactly. So if they're going to stick with this plan, there's still some fine tuning from a league perspective that they have to do, and that's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Dave. Anything else come to mind from the game that you were like, like this just maybe it rubbed you the wrong way? Maybe it was a player that played well. Anything else stick out?
Like I said, 4 times the ball was on the turf.
Yeah,
4 times. They only lost one of them, but that's too many times for it being on the ground. That's something you definitely got to clean up. Yeah, that was Watkins on his first punt return. Fair caught it when I thought he had space.
Oh my gosh!
And then on the second one, he tried to catch it running backwards. So it's like I feel like he made the wrong call on both of those. So that was a. Did he have a catch otherwise?
He might have had one, but let me check.
Because if not, then he's really got some.
Hey, no.
Yeah. Well, I haven't had him on when we do our projected 53-man roster. I haven't had him at all.
I don't think I have either, but I could be.
I just feel like Calvin Austin could be a better player that does the same thing. So I was surprised that they had
Scotty Miller could do that.
Same as well.
Yeah.
So that was a little disappointed. There's some people that I mean, my goodness, I feel some of the reserve linemen really were doing stuff. The local here from from our area offensive line for the Steelers, Joey Fisher from your alma mater, Shepherd University.
Yep.
He had some great blocks, like I think on that long run and then the touchdown. He was in there at guard for that. He also gave up a pressure and pass protection, but they're still finding themselves in that first preseason game. It's funny. I said I'm pretty sure it was last night to you. I said, I like that the Steelers are playing a team that's ahead of schedule with them. It's really going to show them and really going to test them. You know what it showed me? That the Texans had a lot more of that stuff cleaned up that the Steelers didn't. I felt like, you know how sloppy the Hall of Fame game always is.
Yeah.
Whenever you watch those, it felt like a Hall of Fame type game for the Steelers.
I agree.
They weren't playing a team that was playing that they were a team that was a week beyond the Hall of Fame game.
Right.
So really, it's going to come down to what do they do from here? Where do they go against Buffalo, who will be on a team on the same schedule as them? Hopefully, we'll get to see a little bit more ones-on-ones in that game. Maybe we'll, not just rest in all the TJ Watson, Russell Wilsons, and Minka Fitzpatricks of the world. And you've left yourself room for improvement, Steelers. You've left yourself room for improvement from preseason week 1 to preseason week 2. Now it's time for guys to really step up. Loved seeing them using the fullback. Have to admit there.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but
all right,
we'll see what happens.
We'll see. I'm going to do my final thoughts first here, and I just want to remind the fan base out there that we all said, okay, we all drank the Kool-Aid last year, right? We all were all in on the pristine preseason with the offense and the wins and all that stuff, and we said we can't buy into the hype. But also, I think that goes both ways in terms of the fan reaction after a preseason game. You can't say, all right, well, I'm not going to get super excited because I learned my lesson last year. You also can't be so down in the dumps that you're ready to find a local bridge and jump off it.
Yes.
Because it wasn't that bad, number one. And number two, I don't expect perfection in the preseason. I just want them to just show improvement, keep improving, and then play good football once the regular season comes. So I think for me, my final thoughts on this game are simple. Was it pretty? No, there was nothing pretty about this game. But is it just the first of 3 chances to really improve themselves? Yeah. So let's see what they do in week 2. I was intrigued by some things. I think intrigued is the right word for me because I wasn't pleased with much, but I was intrigued by a lot of things in terms of how they played, play design, stuff like that. A lot to chew on here, but I wasn't overly upset. We'll put it that way. Dave, what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are, if the Steelers are doing the Mike Tomlin thing where they do not seek comfort, then you're not going to be have comfort after this game. You should not be feeling comfort when you have to go into those meetings. I don't know if they give them completely the day off tomorrow. I know they're back for training camp practice in the afternoon Sunday. I don't know if they'll have, like I said, if they have meetings tomorrow or if they're just letting them have a day with their families. But when you come into those meetings, there's not going to be anything comfortable about it. You shouldn't be. Now, was it an absolute disaster where, my goodness, they couldn't stop anybody ever and they couldn't get a first down to save their life? No, it was not that. I would say there were plenty of times that if the Steelers didn't have the sloppiness, I think they'd have been fine. I mean, my goodness, just add the wide open touchdown when they got down to the 1 yard line, and it's a whole different way the game plays out. But you just got to clean those things up. But the most important thing for me to really finish this up is, rather than talking about reports and rather than talking about potential player acquisitions and rather than talking about the draft, rather than talking about free agency, whether to talk about OTAs, whether to talk about the players' interviews, getting to training camp, we were talking about and breaking down what we could see with our eyes on our television sets. And for those of you even in the live chat that were at the game in the stadium, what we're seeing in a game situation, even though it's preseason and doesn't count. This is great to be talking about. I would much rather talk about these kind of things. So I'm excited about that moving forward.
Absolutely. And to let everyone know, tomorrow I'm going to have a special Let's Ride podcast with winners and losers. You can check that out on our audio only feed, wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to have everything for you. We'll have the Q&A on Sunday. That'll be here on YouTube as well as on the audio only feed. We'll have all the coverage that you would possibly need coming up next week as they gear up for the Buffalo Bills. But 0-1, the Steelers streak, which was at 6 games, I believe, 6 in a row preseason games, has been snapped. Oh, well.
This is a picture of me caring.
Exactly. We do not care, as Mike Tomlin would say. Yeah. All right. So it's been a good show, Dave. Thank you for the time. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week on another post-game show. Take it easy.
Steel Curtain Network. Get it.
Everybody else gets a little tight.